My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state. Many states will be different. Many will have a different number of weeks, or some will have more conservative than others, and that's what they will be. At the end of the day, this is all about the will of the people. You must follow your heart or, in many cases, your religion or your faith. Do what's right for your family and do what's right for yourself. Do what's right for your children. Do what's right for our country and vote. So important to vote.
It is jarring to watch this man brazenly lie. Like we don't know what is coming with him in power, not to mention Republicans having both the House, Senate, and Supreme Court, plus the outcome of a federal abortion ban looming. Thus,
what do you think of the world right now? Things feel okay now to you? Are you scared?
Not really.
Because I know there's the election, right?
Yes.
Do you what are people truly scared of, do you think, when they talk about Trump? But what is it? I kind of start to wonder, what do people be scared of?
I can tell you right. I mean, so for me, I didn't love either candidate here. I really didn't understand being enthusiastic about either candidate. I think, I'm not a Trump guy, obviously. I think he is dangerous in the things that I'm scared of the most. And the thing that made me lean towards Kamala was, more than anything, was the Supreme Court, and that it would be, if it's put under like far right control for the next however long. We've already seen, women's right to, over their bodies, the abortion, Roe v. Wade's been overturned, which I think is really dangerous. That's going to really affect women's health care. Already in states that banned it, you see they're getting less just general OBGYN care because it's more dangerous to be a doctor in those states. So we don't think about it trickles down. So it's harder to get just general health care, let alone abortion, in Texas now for women. And that's only going to get harder in rural states. And I think for me, that was the number one issue. Yeah. That's really scary to me.
Well, leave it to none other than comedian Stavros Halkias, who you can see make appearance after appearance on Haas's Twitch stream, to go on Theo Von's podcast and set the record straight for Theo's audience.
We're going to have to seal up those borders.
He made immigration the centerpiece of his campaign.
We're like a garbage can for the world.
And when he's back in the White House, President-elect Trump has promised to immediately crack down with mass deportations of people in the country illegally.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history to get the criminals out.
To do that, Trump has said he'll mobilize the military and local police. But he's offered few specific details on how it will actually work. With 11 million undocumented people living in the U.S., the process would be expensive and complicated. One report puts the price tag at an estimated $88 billion a year to hire new ICE agents, build detention camps, and carry out legal processing.
The craziest part about this is that all of this money could have gone towards infrastructure. It could have gone towards healthcare, better schools, paid sick leave, childcare, tax credits, and much more. But the game plan concocted by the likes of Trump and Stephen Miller is to blame non-white people and use our tax dollars to deport them. It's a joke that Stavros calls out.
Well, especially with the border being open and they're letting us in. It's, you know what I'm saying, though? It's like you're just...
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's the best time to repeal that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
If we're going to follow your logic and you claim they got coming in, maybe we should also keep abortion. But, I think we got plenty of homegrown too, but
yeah. We've got our own.
Sure.
We got some union guys.
We've got some heirloom American for sure.
Incredible. When faced with a jab from his fellow comedian Theo Von, Stavros navigates the waters incredibly well and delivers a message that should resonate with the masses. The data also backs up his point.
Elon Musk pledges $45 million a month to Donald Trump's campaign.
Come on up here, Elon. He created the first major American car company in generations, and his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space. Come here. Take over, Elon. Just take over.
Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
As cringe as it is to think about what we are witnessing, the richest man in the world, who quipped if Trump didn't win, he may be thrown in jail, hedged his bets using government subsidies, our taxpayer money, to funnel to Trump and secure more wealth and power by having his Manchurian candidate. It is preposterous.
And I think you can really see stuff that we take for granted as progress. Gay marriage is another thing. There's a really weird cultural, I think this is what happens anytime the party that's backed by the powers that be, big business, the rich people, the richest people in the world want far right politicians. And I think if they
still?
Absolutely, without question.
I feel like tech is now. I just feel like the parties
Elon
have
Musk
changed.
is a huge Trump guy.
That's a good point.
I think rich people will support whoever's in power, number one, but they want to transfer wealth from the poor to the rich. They've been really good at doing it. The biggest issue, I think the reason the Democrats lost is because they pretend that there is no problem. It's like, that's f***ing crazy.
This is an analysis that MSNBC should be gushing over. Stavros discards the talking points from the right, has a laugh, and breaks down why the Dems lost. In turn, it's a clear indication of how the party must shift, or they will continue losing elections.
Americans feel like they're still being price gouged, even as inflation has come down. In many ways, they're right. If we take a closer look at a few of the biggest drivers of inflation, we'll see that some corporations are still using their power and shady techniques. Of course, much more needs to be done. Americans are struggling to get by, while corporations are raking it in. We need to keep tackling corporate power.
I love this guy's videos. In addition, Stavros adds more to the conversation on Theo Vaughn's show.
There are issues here. It is more expensive. I think inflation, a big part of inflation is that companies realize they can just charge you more and say it's somebody else's fault. A lot of it's price gouging. That's true. And
everything gets so much more expensive.
And companies are, some of it is just real inflation, but some of it is companies are hiding behind inflation. And like, Democrats did nothing to stop price gouging, right? They didn't even say they were going to do it. You can't tell people that things are going good when they're just clearly not.
Exactly. And even as the Justice Department was investigating price gouging, it did not resonate with voters because at the end of the day, the Harris campaign ran a center-right campaign that displayed how she was more prone to listening to an Uber executive than someone struggling.
Liz Cheney really is a leader. I tell you, I have never voted for a Democrat. But this year, I am proudly casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Don't let the Dem establishment like Jamie Harrison gaslight you. This was an objectively poorly run campaign.
It sucks because they offered, the Democratic Party's become like, they were going after Dick Cheney, and who's like,
it was so bizarre.
It's crazy because they're going after policy-wise, moderates, Republican people who most working class people don't agree with the economic stuff that they're saying. And then culturally, it bothers me when you become a party of like tattletales. It's become a party of like middle managers that want to get mad at you if you say the wrong thing. And it's like, that's not the most important issue. The most important issue for people is that things are more, they have no health care. Wage inequality is out of control. People's wages have not kept pace with how much bosses are earning.
Well, yeah. Well, what percent? I mean, Bernie Sanders said greatly that he thought if AI starts to happen for companies, right? So companies are making more money because of AI because they don't need people.
Yeah.
Right. Then some of that money should go to the employees.
Of course.
As opposed and cut it down their hours for the week. Now you give them a better life instead of just making it where, well,
we don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you don't get anything and we keep all the profits.
Amen to that, Brother Stavros. Amen. men. Hey, I appreciate you watching. Now, if you can, please do become a channel member by going to youtube.com/TYTsports and clicking the join button. If that's too much for you, you can just go to tyt.com/join to become a member. It helps all of us out here at the Young Turks and keeps our network afloat. In addition, you could follow me on my socials on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate the love. Have a great day.
States of America do better than these two candidates?
After his deal with Fox Sports abruptly ended via poor ratings, Skip Bayless is giving election takes.
Let me say this about Donald Trump. I do not share a number of his views, maybe many of his views, but I do believe he's a natural-born leader who isn't afraid to make tough decisions and who, however you want to explain it, has been very lucky through his life. See the little scar on his ear as opposed to a hole in his head.
And here was his analysis.
But I will say this about Donald Trump. He does have what I call, if you will, some General Patton in him. You know General Patton from World War II, way before some of your times? Look him up. Donald Trump has some hard commander in him. When we were at war, World War II, with the Japanese in the Pacific Theater and Hitler in Europe, think about that. Whew, talk about double jeopardy. I'm sure glad we had General Patton on our side. He was a bad motor scooter.
Let's pause here. Using the word general and a name like Donald Trump at this stage in the game.
He asked Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, about claims that Trump once asked him, quote, "Why can't you be like the German generals?" So Goldberg then writes, well, he told me that when Trump raised the subject of German generals, Kelly responded by asking, "Do you mean Bismarck's generals?" He went on, "I mean, I know he didn't know who Bismarck was or about the Franco-Prussian War. I said, do you mean the Kaiser's generals? Surely you cannot mean Hitler's generals." And he said, yeah, Hitler's generals. And The Atlantic goes on to cite then two more sources who were at the Trump White House. They claimed that they heard Trump say, quote, "I need the kind of generals that Hitler had, people who were totally loyal to him that follow orders."
My mind and yours should immediately go to this. Also, the comparisons that Skip Bayless uses are just off.
Sometimes if you want to preserve your freedom from superpowers that want to take it from you, you need a Patton on your side at the controls, even if you don't believe in his politics.
Pause once more. It's rather odd, that Skip Bayless would attach Donald Trump to preserving freedoms when the man wants to do the complete opposite. From The Atlantic, the United States is on the eve of an election that could see the return to power of Donald Trump, an autocrat who vociferously and repeatedly threatens the basic freedoms of the American people, with a particular preoccupation with curbing freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Writes Adrian LaFrance, worse still, he has persuaded his followers to cheer on the demise of their own freedoms. When Trump tells people that journalists are, quote, the enemy of the American people, or, quote, evil, when he says that Americans who describe the criminal charges he faces should be investigated for treason, he's not merely denigrating a professional class. He's directly attacking the rights of all Americans. He is attacking those who happen to work as journalists, but he is likewise attacking their neighbors, every American who has the right to free speech and free press themselves. Snap it up, because that is very well put. And if Skip is watching, he should know. Trump has repeatedly suggested investigating and imprisoning Americans, as well as turning the United States military on the American public in order to do so. Do not, in any way, shape, or form, attach freedom to this man. He does not want freedom for the American public. He does not want freedom for anybody. And, as the writer rightfully puts it, he wants to limit the freedoms of those who believe that he is the most freedom person. It's like having Elon Musk say that he is the king of free speech, and then all he does on a platform that he buys overpays for through our own tax money and government subsidies is how he is even within the ranks of the wealthiest person on the planet. What does he do? Anybody who investigates him, you're banned. Anybody who tweets about Palestine, banned. Anybody who tweets against extremism, banned. Journalist Matt Binder, who's on the Majority Report, works for Mashable, banned. Ken Klippenstein, banned. What do they all have in common here? And who is the number one donor to Donald Trump's campaign? Elon Musk. So don't give me this whole, oh, we're all about free speech. No, you're not. Get out of here, man. You are not about that. What you are about is stripping the rights of Americans. And it should also be noted that Donald Trump is the kind of person who praises dictators, autocrats. He is chummy with Vladimir Putin. One can be led to believe why. Is there something hanging over his head, or does he just want to be that sort of figure? He has praised Kim Jong-un and really appreciates how, per his own words to Fox News, he appreciates, in addition, how Kim Jong-un's people stand up and pay attention, and he wants his people to do the same. He really appreciates Duterte. These are, and President Xi Jinping, these are horrendous men. These are not the kind of people that you should be giving not just praise, but stamp after stamp after stamp of approval. And we know why. It's because he wants to join that club.
And I do try to live my life by the Bible. And I believe with all my heart and all my soul that if our country does not support Israel, our country will fall. Please understand, every time I pray for the Palestinian victims of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I pray that it will end with some kind of peaceful coexistence, as unrealistic as that might be. But all I know for sure is that if we do elect a regime that turns its back on Israel, we will fail and we will fall. That's just my spiritual, biblical belief. It sounds like Trump is more inclined to support Israel. I know what Kamala said about doing everything in her power to end the Gaza conflict. I'm sorry, I never know what to believe anymore from one side or the other.
Here's what to believe, dude. Both have received money from AIPAC, so let's just be very, very blunt about it. They have both uttered the Israel has a right to defend itself line over and over again. They are both ardent supporters of Israel. So cut the crap here, Skip. In addition, want to end the Gaza conflict. That's what he said, right? Gaza conflict, as Bayless puts it. Awful frame. Awful frame. The only route is an arms embargo. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, and that's totally fine. I don't know, how knees deep Skip is into what's going on. But my question is, biblically, why do you believe this? Because let me tell you something. If you are an evangelical Christian, do we know what happens to the Jewish people? Is that what you believe? Because those are serious questions that I have for you, man.
I'm not even sure I can trust our voting process anymore. How many votes are being allowed from people who are not even U.S. citizens? I have no idea. Don't know what to trust anymore.
Pause again. This echoes Trump's remarks about how illegal citizens are voting en masse, so he does not win. It's just another conspiracy for Trump to signal to his ardent supporters and for them to say, oh, he was cheated again. All these illegals, and they're just going to get the base riled up and they're going to claim fraud. However, via ProPublica, voting by non-citizens is illegal under federal law, and it almost never happens. State and federal elections require voters to be citizens of this country. Government election officials from both parties have emphasized that there are protections in place across the country to prevent non-citizens from casting a ballot. And listen to this. I'm going to play this piece of sound. Okay. It is from a Republican whose name is Joe Neild. He's a member of the RNC's election integrity team in Pennsylvania. He was listening to Republicans call in and ask questions. Here is something the RNC and Republicans, many, I would say 90% of them, will not say because they don't want you to know this. But all of this, I give him credit, being objective, credit where credit is due. He is right. And this is all accurate that he is going to say when responding to a caller. Here's that piece of video.
I have two questions. The first one is, how do you know if they are illegal aliens or not, like when they're voting? As far as what you were explaining with the ID, and if they're from another country, it was okay as long as they had an ID. How do you know if they're illegal aliens? How can you stop that? If
they're illegal aliens, they're not going to be inside the poll book. Because if they're illegal aliens, they're not going to be able to register to vote because they'll need a driver's license number or a social security number. And then through recent litigation in the years past, you do have to be able to get a driver's license here in Pennsylvania. You have to show proof of citizenship. So that is one way that they will not be able to get a driver's license. And then you have to be, since they're illegal, they're not going to be able to get a social security number either.
Why won't they come out and say this in droves? We know why. It's because they need to hang their hat on many pillars to uplift the conspiracy that they don't want Trump to win, when really there is one side, and I say this all the time, trying to limit the vote, that does not want you to vote. And there's another side that wants everyone to vote if you are a citizen of the country. There's one side that's not trying to make it almost impossible in some states to vote. And the other side wants to limit it because, again, as I've said many times over, via Paul Weyrich, they win elections. Conservatives do when the voter turnout and the vote is down. And they will do everything in their power for that to manifest.
I'm just not sure either he or Kamala truly believe in a higher power, truly worship that higher power, truly pray for divine guidance. I'm just not sure either candidate has God in his or her heart. I have pretty good instincts about this, and I'm just not convinced.
And again, credit where it's due. This is actually spot on from Skip Bayless. And this is something that I really agree with. Take a look.
But Kamala, I don't know. The best thing I can say about Kamala is she'd be okay. Not bad. Just fine. But rare? Special? Dynamic? I don't know. Maybe I'd be pleasantly surprised once she took over. But I believe that many people, maybe a majority of people voting for Kamala, are doing so by default. They're voting for Kamala only because there's no way they'd vote for Donald Trump.
If you have not already, I beg you, vote. It is quite literally the least that we can do. Do I believe it's a moral duty and a civic duty? Yeah, I do. I do. But what I will also say is this, as a proud leftist and someone who appears more left than others at this point, elections are the bare minimum. Yes, it is important to really look into these candidates, know their policies, see where they morally align with your values and how you want that to be represented in DC. But it's also very important to have that same sort of representation locally. It is about grassroots movements. It is about building community. It is about organizing. It is about activism. It is about protest. It is about building a coalition locally because that is what matters. Local politics really matter. And that's also on the ballot as well.